Welcome to Daily Faith, and I am so glad you can join us, and other folk will be joining us. I'm glad those that are watching us on Integrity Television and Destiny and all the other platforms, the TCT stations that we're on, Channel 29 and Channel 34. We have got a program for you today. In the wee hours of the morning, yesterday I wasn't live. I'd have oral surgery, and they drill the hole into my jaw this way and put a metal stud that will take a crown. And I had quite an interesting day and night last night, so I didn't sleep much. But in the middle of the night, I came across a video from Australia that I'm going to show you in a few minutes that will blow your mind. This is someone outside the prism of all the politics and junk in America. Not afraid to speak, not afraid to speak. And I sent all our family, and I says, I want you to watch this morning before I came here. I got them all in my house, and I mirrored it up to my TV set, and I said, I want you to watch this guy talking truth that in America we don't hear. This will blow your mind. First of all, I want to talk to about my friend Harry Jackson. Bishop Harry Jackson passed away a couple of days ago. He was on this program just a few weeks ago. I've preached in his church in Washington, D.C. He was constantly in the Oval Office with the president. He was one of the president's spiritual advisors, a great man. He lost his wife just over a year ago and is newly remarried, and just a lovely, godly man. And he died 2 days ago. So we want to I want to send celebrations to him, because he is in a far better place. But to all his family in the great church, Hope Christian Church, we just want you to know that we love you, and we are praying for you as you suffer through this great loss for his new wife. We just pray that the arms of God will wrap around you and give you divine comfort. We love Bishop Harry Jackson, and we all are poorer for his passing. So God bless you. We have an interesting and very important show. Now, I've got my friend Zach Drew on, and he has come loaded for bear today. I'm telling you now. I saw this video last night. It's a few minutes long. It's over 8 minutes long, and but it's so important, so important. It will clarify in your mind, I believe, all the stuff that's been going on from the outside. This is from 10,000 miles away. And this man made this video. He's a news anchor, and Sky News is one of the biggest news companies in the world. And he made this thing in Australia with like 25 million of a population, and a million responses to it in 12 hours. Watch this. I hope it doesn't get flagged, because you never know in the censorship days we're living in. Watch this. It will so help you understand what's going on.
Yes, well, good evening. Now, look, I'm not being melodramatic when I say to you tonight, I am broadcasting in what are almost unprecedented circumstances. Your response to what I had to say last night about Trump, Biden and the voting system in America has provoked an overwhelming response. In fact, to this hour, in fewer than 12 hours, there have been almost 1 million views of this material on YouTube. My Facebook page, Alan Jones Australia, will direct you to YouTube. However, there are powerful interests who, while they can't prevent me from saying these things, want a worldwide audience to not hear them. As you know, at least in the latter stages of the campaign, things that the American voter should have known and heard were censored by powerful interests in the media. As we now know, the polls were wrong, the headlines were wrong. Was this designed to collapse the Trump vote? Now that we know that almost half of America rejected these unrelenting, ruthless and dishonest attacks on Trump, are we entering the next phase? Nothing negative about Biden to be said or reported. It appears on published figures that 75 million people have voted for Biden and 71 million for Trump. Americans are entitled to know, is this an accurate reflection of the will of the people? Stay with me. I'll come to that in a moment. Did 75 million Americans reject Trump's phenomenal achievements with the economy? I think not. Before coronavirus, Trump had created 7 million new jobs in America. The average unemployment rate was lower than that of any administration in the history of America. African American youth unemployment was at an all-time low. African American poverty had declined to the lowest rate ever recorded. The unemployment rate for women was the lowest in 70 years. But 75 million Americans chose Biden. The same Biden involved in awful scandals associated with his son, the unanswered allegation that his son consulted his father about a planned venture with a Chinese oil company, corroborated by a partner in the deal. But Joe Biden has said he never discussed the international business activities of his son. The full story is completely ignored by mainstream media organisations. Biden has denied any connection with senior Communist Party officials over his son's business interests. But the New York Post revealed details of the son's business deals in China after his father introduced his son to senior Communist Party officials. In fact, the son flew with Vice President Biden to China on Air Force Two in December 2013 for an 8-day visit with senior Communist Party officials. All this is clear from email records. The Biden camp doesn't deny the authenticity of the emails taken from the hard drive of a computer left at a Delaware computer repair shop. But of course, Biden doesn't have to deny. He's being protected by the media. But in the final debate, Biden denied he had any international dealings involving his family. Who was telling lies? Then there's the business about Ukraine. His son, who doesn't speak Ukrainian, knows nothing about energy, was thrown out of the army with a drug problem, but gets $50,000 a month with a Ukrainian company which is being investigated for corruption. The father visits the Ukraine, and next thing we know, the Ukrainian prosecutor is gone. Aren't we allowed to say that when Biden was vice president to Obama, he pushed for the sacking of the Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin by threatening to pull $1 billion in loan guarantees? Imagine if this was Trump. None of these issues raised by the media with Biden. None of them denied by Biden. Biden doesn't have to worry about denying or answering. He's being protected by media, mainstream and social, and the big tech giants. No one fact-checked Biden when in the final debate he claimed that the former New York Mayor Giuliani was, quote, being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian. Everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States, unquote. But if Trump can't prove election chicanery, then he is discredited. Biden can't prove the Russian allegations, but the media let them run. In an excellent piece 2 weeks ago, Chris Mitchell in the Australian newspaper quoted Glenn Greenwald, who won a Pulitzer Prize in 2014, writing, and I quote, "Is there a single journalist willing to say with a straight face that they believe the emails relating to the Bidens are either fabricated or otherwise altered, but the Bidens just aren't saying so?" He says, "There has to be some limit to your willingness to go into bat for them," unquote. As Chris Mitchell, former distinguished editor of many News Limited mastheads, wrote, Greenwald sticks with the facts. Well, argues Greenwald, I quote, "The broad outlines of this story have been known. Hunter Biden was paid a very large monthly sum by Burisma, at the same time that his father was quite active in using the force of the US government to influence Ukraine's internal affairs," unquote. Mitchell writes that Greenwald was, quote, "scathing of Facebook and Twitter for blocking the sharing of the Post's revelations." He wrote, "Imagine if these two giants united with Google to declare henceforth we will ban all content that's critical of President Trump and or the Republican Party, but will actively promote criticism of Joe Biden and the Democrats," unquote. Well, of course, the opposite's happened. Not a criticism of Biden, but open slather on Trump. As Chris Mitchell wrote, free speech cannot just be for people you agree with. We now have fact-checking by Facebook. Writes Greenwald, what makes Mark Zuckerberg's company competent to fact-check the work of other journalists? Why did Facebook block none of the endless orgy of Russiagate conspiracy? Remember, all to damage Donald Trump. Make no mistake, everything that Trump says about fake news media is true. Again, Chris Mitchell, I quote, "Why do journalists of the left who are happy to publish unsourced and unverified allegations that Trump was in league with the Russians now want infinite checking of allegations damaging to Biden?" And then, as Corey Bernardi indicated last night, people as old as 120 years of age had cast ballots in the 2020 election. When critics assert that Biden's comeback was driven by the late counting of hundreds of thousands of mail-in votes some in quote-unquote clusters, all for Biden, and not a single vote for Trump, and mostly in key swing states, the Biden apologists everywhere say, where's the evidence? When these mail-in votes transform the results. I would say the evidence is common sense. Is it true that on the morning after voting day, that's a week ago, 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., 140,000 votes appeared in Wisconsin for Biden? 3 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., 200,000 votes found in Michigan for Biden. 3:30 a.m. to 5 a.m., 1 million votes in Pennsylvania for Biden. Aren't American voters entitled to an explanation? Then consider this. Are we now seriously meant to believe that the Biden, who less than a week ago referred to half of America as chumps and ugly people, is the same Joe Biden who refused to denounce Antifa, the same Joe Biden who refused to denounce the Antifa and Black Lives Matter rioters, looters and arsonists, who actually passed, Biden did, Antifa off as just an idea? Is this Biden now, quote, the unifier in chief, as a front page headline today suggests? Is this the same Joe Biden who, in a case of reverse extortion, admitted by him on video, threatened to withhold $1 billion loan guarantee to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor and took the heat off his son in their investigation of Burisma? The same Joe Biden featured in recent weeks on both his son's laptop and revealed in Tony Bobulinski's separate trove of emails, texts and audio files as the big guy of a multi-million-dollar shakedown? Or are we talking about a different Joe Biden? It's extraordinary to believe that for a bloke who showed during the campaign that sometimes he didn't know where he was or against whom he was competing, he's gained 75 million votes. When everywhere else in the Senate, the House of Representatives, and in the governorships of the 50 states, Trump and his team prevailed. Perhaps only history will record how someone like Joe Biden, almost bottom of his class at law school, found cheating in his exams, in a previous attempt at the presidency, was found to have lifted the speeches of previously notable Democratic and Labor Party figures, and yet now they joke about this. They joke about it. Are you kidding me? Perhaps only history will be able to record how such a man became president. And the vice president could be a woman who contested the Democratic primaries. She was so unwanted by the party, she pulled out before the primaries started. She didn't get past December last year. She could be president and leader of the free world. Spare me. I repeat what I said last night. Despite the attempted brainwashing of the electorate by Hollywood, the Googles, the Facebooks and the Twitters, and almost all of the media, 71+ million Americans have refused to slump, defeated and silenced. And Donald Trump won't either. He's still president for 71 days. As they say, watch this space. What are your thoughts? Email me at alan@skynews.com.au or text, there it is on the screen, 0414 0008.
Well, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? Isn't that unbelievable? That's the clearest inline thing I've seen. And it takes Australians who are not cluttered by the fear of reprisal and people burning down streets and cities to tell you exactly what is right, what it is. And I'm telling you now, folks, the more I see this, the more I am convinced in my heart that this was not a fair election, that this was rigged. And how come the Republicans gained in the House, which is Nancy Pelosi's territory, and will maintain, I believe, the Senate, and yet Trump got beaten? And as he's pointed out, for all these sudden appearances of these millions of votes, I am so excited, and I'm glad for his forbearance to let me show that video from Australia. But I think, Zach, you will be in agreement with pretty much everything you just heard just now?
Amen. I'm in total agreement. And actually, half the things that he said are in my notes for today's show. So my hat is off to Alan Jones
is that crazy?
Of Sky News. That was amazing. It was amazing. And like you said, does it take a foreign news network to report the truth? Well, apparently it does. As you know, about 3 days ago, Judge Janine, her show was canceled. She's been suspended, and many rumors are speaking of the fact that She was about to report on the fraud of the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's accurate, totally accurate or not. We know that something is happening, but we do know that Fox News just yesterday, when the White House press secretary
I saw
was
this.
speaking about fraud, Kellya McEnany, they cut her off. They cut her off in the middle of her
Absolutely.
speech.
Yeah.
And Tucker Carlson spoke last night saying, how can a news network? And so Tucker Carlson of Fox News is criticizing
For now.
live Fox News, saying, how can a news network cut off the White House press secretary talking about facts? So heads are rolling right now at Fox News. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
my hat is off to Alan Jones. The enemy here in this election, the biggest enemy was, like Alan Jones said, it's mainstream media. It's mainstream
Absolutely.
media and big tech
Absolutely.
companies, primarily Google and Facebook.
Yeah. And I'm
Because this
watching.
pin right here. Go ahead.
I'm watching. Fox News is losing viewers by the million. Facebook is the same thing. There's a new platform that people are going to. It's called Parler, and it's French parler, means to
Yes.
speak. And they are. Dan Bongino is one of the owners of it, and he came on yesterday. I was watching his program,
Yes.
and it is the #1 downloaded app in the world. So much so that it has blown their doors off. And he apologized. He says, look, I take responsibility. He says, we have absolutely been 3 million new subscribers this week. He says it has overwhelmed our systems. And so what I feel is, as this thing drips out and drips out and drips out, and as you see these states being taken back from the Democrats back to neutral status, and as you watch these troves, is the best word I've heard to describe of votes, I think we're seeing a turn in this whole thing. That's my own gut feeling of it.
Yeah.
Give us some.
I believe that we are too.
I know you research. You are one of the greatest researchers and seers. A prophet sees something out of nothing, and you have a prophetic voice. But a seer is someone that looks at the field of battle and the field of what's happening. And you are one of the best I've ever seen at reading it and connecting the dots that I don't see. And you take a piece from here and you connect it to that piece, and you go, oh my Lord. And you say, hold on, there's one more. Give us an overview. Where do you think we are at the moment, Zach?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm gonna address that question. I just want to finish my point I was going to make, because I held up a pin earlier. Because of the majority of Americans being ignorant, mean unknowing, they're sheep that just follow blindly. Because of big tech and the mainstream media, this pin could run to be a Democrat president. And because they have Democrat in their name, this pin would garner millions and millions and millions of views. And it's a pin. It means nothing. And it's because of mainstream media and big tech companies.
Yeah.
Where we are right now, let me tell you right now, Jesus, and one more thing before I continue. You had oral surgery yesterday. Well, last week I was actually with Pastor Jim Baker.
I know.
And so right before I went on national television, my tooth on the bottom, I have a crown because I had a horrible fishing accident as a kid, believe it or not, a fishing accident, and it knocked out a couple of my teeth. My tooth falls out last week. I go on national television with Pastor Jim Baker for election night coverage.
What kind of fish were you catching to knock out two of your teeth? It was a whopper, yeah?
No. Yeah, so no, actually I didn't catch anything. I got my line caught up in a tree, right? And so you know those little weights that you can put to kind of catch the catfish at the bottom?
Weight, sure.
You put the little weights on the end of your line. I got it caught up in a tree, and so I'm sitting there yanking it with all my might, and all of a sudden, boom! It cuts. That little weight comes back
like a bullet.
It hits me in the lip, Phillip. Goes through my lip and out the other side. and it knocks out some of my bottom teeth. I was 13 years old. And
Jesus.
so I had a root canal and a crown put in and everything. Well, that tooth comes out. So if you see me talking and I look like a redneck from the hills of
I
the
see it now.
Ozarks, that's
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't replaced my tooth
And
yet.
also,
And
you're recovering from COVID as well. Did you have COVID? Did
yes,
I?
well, no. So my mom and my dad had COVID. My cousin, his
Oh
wife,
my
my other
goodness.
cousin, my sister. I started feeling down, and I got tested for it. My wife and I both got tested. Both of our tests were negative, and so we
Thank
feel
God.
great.
Thank God.
But it's going around. Yeah, so my tooth is going to be fixed next week. Actually, this week, this Thursday. So I'll
Well,
have a tooth
this
again.
one's up.
Praise
This
God.
one's up here. And last night I went to bed and I thought someone was in my bed with a mallet smacking me on the side of the head. It was a long night. I'll tell you
Uh,
now. I'm interested to hear your
Jesus
take on this whole
warned.
thing because this is just amazing.
Yes.
Well, this is history.
Jesus warned in the
We're living
very
in
top of
history.
his Olivet Discourse.
Yes.
Yes, we are. This will be in the history books for until Jesus comes back, at least in conservative history books. Jesus warned in the very top of his Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, which was a talk to his disciples about the things that would earmark the end times. Now,
Yeah.
Matthew 24, some of those things are actually meant for the 7 year tribulation. But several of the verses in the beginning, primarily the first 8 verses, they precede the 7 year tribulation. It's the days that would precede it. And all of that leads to the Great Tribulation. And one of the very first verses, Cameron, and I know you know this, that Jesus said was that watch out that no one deceives you. And I think that it's important to remember because every single thing is strategically placed in the Bible. Every single crossing of the T to the dotting of the I's to every name, every number, every paragraph structure,
Yes.
everything is there by deliberate design. And if it's there, it has profound spiritual implications for our lives, or else it would not be there in the holy book of God. So whenever Jesus decided to start out what would earmark the end times, and the very first thing that he said was, watch that no one deceives you. I believe that that was his way of saying that the first most important thing to take note of is that deception is going to be running like absolute craziness in
Yeah.
the end times. And I believe that is exactly what we're seeing. It started early. I was sitting on the stage with Jim Baker, and we knew that there was 6 very important swing states to watch out for. It was Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. It
Yeah.
had been called for Florida. And remember, whatever candidate won 4 of the 6 swing states, this is what we had been saying for weeks. Whatever candidate won, whatever 4 of the 6 swing states with near certainty was going to be the president of the United States. Well, he had won Florida. He was up in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and now Fox News had called Arizona. But the moment
Yeah.
he was up in the majority of those, what happened? We knew that they just simply stopped. They simply stopped
Stopped.
counting on
Yes.
election night like
Everywhere.
magic. Whenever the
Everywhere.
votes were coming in, they weren't
Yeah.
everywhere.
Everywhere at one time. Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Someone somewhere picked up a phone and said, hold the count. Because I was sitting out, because what happened with me is I was watching Bill Henner, and he had a map, and he was going through count. He could push a county and bring it up, and Bill Henner was saying this county is running way ahead for Trump. He's doing better here than he did last election against, and he's going through and he's saying, guys, I'm telling you now, this is incredible. This is not what we, and he would hit another county, and this was blue last election, and now it's red. And I said, Andrew, this thing is about to run. We are about to see this thing come back, because they always I think there's always a drama built in to try and hold the audience. And then all of a sudden, everything shut down.
Yeah. Like you said. Like you said, someone picked up a phone call, and every state on election night is unprecedented. States, you continue to count the votes, and they all stop. And
Went home.
if we do not have they went home. If we do not have the eyes and the mind of Christ to be able to see that that was deception, I don't know what to tell you. Something deceiving was taking place. And then Nevada was coming down to just Nevada, and they literally just said, hey, you know what? We're going to stop counting votes for 2 days. We're just not going to count any for 2 days. Votes come in, you count them. I can tell you what they're waiting for. I actually messaged into your show last Friday, and I said Nevada was waiting for the homeless in Los Angeles, California to vote.
Tell us about that.
And I'm serious. It was Wayne Allen Root. He actually took to his Twitter, and he has evidence there and on his page. He went into it. But his tweet said, I just got info on mail-in ballot fraud perpetrated by Biden and Democrats. Here in Nevada, thousands of ballots were sent in by homeless people in Los Angeles, California, from one singular homeless shelter. For Arizona, for Nevada.
Nevada.
They were waiting. Listen to this. So I'm saying that homeless people by the thousands from one particular homeless shelter in California, okay, were voting in, oh, excuse me, sorry. Am I still there?
Yeah. You're good.
In Los Angeles, California, a singular homeless shelter.
You're delayed.
This is the problem with doing things on my computer. Thousands of people in California homeless shelter were voting for the president in Nevada.
Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. What I heard, the word I heard all the time was that Biden was underperforming. He was underperforming. And in this state in this county Hillary won, Biden is underperforming. And when this switch was thrown, I said, Andrew, they're summing up. Something has happened in this, in the big world out there. Let me explain. You and I, I'm talking to our viewers, you and I are little wee peons, little bits of dust to these folks in DC. We are the unwashed that funds their nonsense. Believe me, we are the unwashed that just votes every 4 years. We've had this for years. The black voter is ignored until every 4 years, and then they beat the drum about the racism drum and get the folk ginned up, and they go back again and vote one more time, and then nothing is done. Whereas Trump did more for the black community than Obama ever thought of doing. His prison reform. Why didn't Biden and Obama have prison reform? It took Trump to do that. He lifted millions out of poverty, the lowest unemployment rate from African Americans ever in history. And you're telling me that suddenly so the break came, and what happened after the break?
They started counting ballots. You see, all for Biden. It was the night in Michigan. We saw that there was 138,000 ballots that came in for Biden. Now, there were many reports that night that 0 came in for Trump. That actually wasn't accurate. It was less than 10,000, though. It was less than 10,000 new votes came in for President Trump in Michigan in the wee hours of the morning. Whenever you see that when the Democrat fairy, right? You know, we should have the tooth fairy. The Democrat fairy, he wakes up in the wee hours of the morning. He changes elections for the Democrats.
You need a Democrat fairy.
Yes. And now, so we knew that Biden's base was statistically more likely to vote by mail. And Andrew Bellers and I had been talking about on the show for weeks that while that is true, that is one of the ways they're going to be able to hijack this for voter fraud. We've been saying it for a long time. Yeah. So though Michigan received 138,000 ballots overnight for Biden and less than 10,000, yes, Biden's base is more likely to vote by mail, but not 13.8 times more likely to vote by mail. Listen, Philip, if there is such an important article that I have on my desk, and it hits so many important points. Do you mind if I read that right now?
Absolutely. This is your show.
This is very important. The headline is titled this: Mathematical impossibilities may be what trips up Democrat plans. It starts off like this. It says, all over the country, Trump's lawyers are gathering evidence showing that Democrats deliberately interfered with the election outcome. Yes, these facts are needed, but one can make a good case that the most powerful evidence of all is the mathematical data showing that this election outcome could not possibly have happened. This is a key paragraph that describes Trump supporters, okay, and why this is so unlikely that we would vote for Trump in or Republican in all other areas, but then not for president. It doesn't make any sense. It says this: Trump's 70 million voters are people who have a specific vision of America. That's right. That's me. They see it as a nation with a constitutionally limited government, a colorblind melting pot of people all holding fealty to America, and a place for an honestly run free market. Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes.
They want low taxes, no unnecessary foreign wars, a secure border, energy independence, and a high support of Israel combined with a low support for the United Nations, to name a few things.
That's me.
These are not people who would split the ticket, right? We wouldn't split the ticket.
No,
Returning
never
Trump
do.
to the White House while skimping on the Senate.
No.
Instead, Trump voters are the kind who will vote Republican down the ticket.
Guilty.
From President of the United States to the county dog catcher.
That's me.
Do you agree? Is that you, Phillip?
That's me. My vote does not take long to make. I'll promise you that now.
It continues by saying this: Trump was the kind of candidate who was going to bring long, powerful coattails with him. And we saw those coattails. Republicans had a massive sweep at the state level across America, giving almost 60% of state houses and governor mansions to Republicans. In the same way, at the House, the Republicans did not only lose seats, but they also gained seats. Yeah. Elementary logic. Go ahead. What were you going to say something?
The big thing for the House was that Pelosi was going to take over the House. I mean,
yes.
Well, not just take over. I mean, extend her power in the House. That was the big deal. And the Senate was going to go blue as well. Didn't happen.
That's right. It did not. Elementary logic says if there are coattails, there's a coat. However, even at the ballot races, when a bright rosy red were being asked to believe that those same voters didn't want Trump, that defies credulity. Absolutely. What's more likely is that those manufacturing fake ballots had limited time in their rush to create thousands of post-election day ballots for Biden. They weren't going to fill in the dots for every single race. They just marked Biden and maybe the Democrat Party Senate candidate, and that's what the data shows. So here's what the data shows. In Michigan, this is one example. And Michigan is a microcosm of nearly every single swing state, if not every swing state. In Michigan, Trump received 2,637,173 votes, while the GOP Senate candidate received 2,630,042 votes. So the difference here is only 7,131, which is not far off from what we see historically. So that is a normal percentage. In the same state, Joe Biden received 2,787,544 votes, while the Democrat Senate received 2,718,451. So this is the point. The difference is 69,093 votes, which is much higher than the historic norm. In Barack Obama's 2008 victory, he only had a difference of 9,000 votes. So somehow we're to believe that Joe Biden's difference is a 60,000 ballot difference than President Barack Obama. This sends red flags absolutely everywhere.
No way.
This defies something called Benford's Law, okay? Benford's Law is often used by election analysts, both in the United States and abroad, to detect voter fraud or other sorts of improprieties in elections. U.S. government agencies like the U.S. Department of Agriculture often apply Benford's Law when auditing information from farmers who rely on federal subsidies. And this is setting every single trigger, every single warning. The Benford Law, the analytical data being inserted is saying huge red flags, absolute fraud everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. That's crazy.
Here's an article. It says Trump campaign staff claims to have statistical evidence of fraud in Wisconsin. One member of President Trump's re-election team spoke with the Washington Examiner on the condition, spoke anonymously, said the ballot data in Milwaukee indicates illegal activity by Democrats in the city. The distribution of those ballots in favor of presumptive President-elect Joe Biden, the individual alleged violates Benford's law, an analytical framework used by statisticians when observing a set of randomized data points. So yes, there was a lot of fraud, but the biggest fraud that took place is the mathematical evidence. It is impossible to have outcomes like we saw in this election. In Philadelphia, for example, the likelihood of the city's voting outcome is as likely as someone flipping a coin 100 times, someone said, 100 times, and it landing on heads every single time. Rudy Giuliani explained how Democrats in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia violated federal law. In Pennsylvania alone, the Democrats locked the doors from ballot inspectors for several hours while they counted 400,000 votes for Joe Biden. He also said, based on evidence they already have, that there could be as many as 900,000 invalid votes in Pennsylvania alone. And that's why, Philip, it's going to come down to the courts. The courts will end up deciding who the next president of the United States is. And I have friends, and I know a lot of my circles is pretty far right. I know your circles are too.
Yeah.
But I still do have a lot of friends that I would kind of deem as moderate or conservative, but they're not informed conservatives. And I had a conversation with somebody last night that was just absolutely shocked out of their minds that I said that Donald Trump still has a real possibility of winning this thing. And it is because of mainstream media and the technology giants. And that's why, listen, I'm so excited that the Department of Justice filed an antitrust lawsuit against Google. Yeah. They are the problem with this thing. Listen, so they're coming against, the DOJ has filed this lawsuit against Google, right? And it is because they are, to be a monopoly is not illegal, but to be a monopoly and strangle out your competition is absolutely illegal. And that's exactly what Google has done. Yeah. This is the problem. You see, Google, and I don't know if you know this, but Google controls 90% of all online search markets. Now, to a millennial, that is huge, because now I understand that I'm an oddity in my generation because I like to read. I like to read books. Yeah. But the vast majority of young people do not read books. They read everything online, and you are more likely to actually receive, and I know we're talking about Google, but you're more likely to receive your news on Facebook than anywhere else. And Google controls 90% of every piece of information that we consume online. Let that sink in. Billions of people, their primary source of information is filtered through one singular source. It's the default search engine on Chrome, Safari, and Firefox. On mobile, it's the default search engine on all Android and iOS. Actually, Google pays Apple $8 billion every single year to just be their default search engine. And sort of, I'm talking to my friend last night. This is what they're doing. They are manipulating the masses. They're stirring the pot. They're trying to breed a civil war in America. Because if they can get the vast majority of people on the left to believe that Joe Biden is absolutely the president, and half of the ill-informed conservatives to believe, I don't like the outcome, but it does look like he won fair and square, then they'll be able to take over the country in no time at all. This is the situation that we're dealing with.
They're doing it now. I mean, you can see it. You can see it continuously. And this is where I come in along on top of all this. And the church is silent. The church is the church are cowards as far as speaking up about this kind of stuff. We're so afraid of what, oh, I've had pastors call me and say, oh, I've got Democrats in my church, and if I talk about this, they're going to walk out and it's going to cost the church their tithes. And I'm thinking, my God, my God, my God, you are selling your country away down the river for someone's tithe? Have we lost ourselves doing this, what I'm doing? I am losing pastors because, well, it's controversial when you talk about this. We need to... Listen, guys, we are fighting for America. Now listen to me. Your grandkids will live in the world that you're creating just now, and we've just created last week. Now, I believe with all my heart, and I'm exact. I read continuously. I'm a forager. My dad was the same. I get up in the morning, early in the morning, and I read the BBC is as loony left as you've ever seen. But they have the panache of being the British Broadcasting Corporation, and they're all left-wing nuts. But I check them out. I go to the Sky News. So before dawn breaks in America, I've spent an hour, 2 hours in European news before I begin to work through.
That's amazing.
So I look across the world. It's a genetic thing from my dad, to be quite frank with you. And I am astonished and appalled at how uninformed the average American person is. We have been given by God the greatest nation with the greatest system, the Constitution, like no other nation in the world. Our blessings have come from it. And we are selling it. We are selling it for 5 minutes peace. Donald, shut up. Let Joe be the president. Be quiet. If they become president and vice president of America, you won't know America in 4 years. I'm telling you. There'll be no wall. There'll be no restrictions from people coming into America. They want to give all immigrants. I'm an immigrant. And it took me years, and every dime I possessed, I had to borrow money to pay for lawyers to become part of this country. I honored this place. I did it right. Took me years and years to do it. And I'm watching these folk coming in here willy-nilly like it's no big deal, and they're treating the place. And what Biden will do is he will give them free education, they'll get free housing, they'll get free benefits, they'll get free medical, and it will bankrupt America. Your taxes won't pay it. He's telling us anyone under $400,000 won't have any increase in the tax. It's a damn lie. It doesn't work. Remember, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You remember 20 times we were told that? It's lies. And we have been so numbed and dumbed by Facebook and by chewing gum information. Give it to me quick. I laugh at my kids all the time. I know stuff from wisdom that they only can find through knowledge. So I'll say something about the history, and I watch them all go to their phones. And they'll tell me, it didn't happen in 1944, it happened in 1943. Oops, sorry, I missed it by a year. What I know in my head, they don't. They get it from Facebook. Who gets it from Google? Mm-hmm. And Google is left-wing, way out left-wing. And this country is selling itself away. Selling itself away. Mm-hmm. It blows my Scottish brain.
Google is very much contributing to the to deconstructionism. And you were talking about the church, and you get so upset with your liberal friends. And we talked about this briefly on the last show I did with you. It's because the philosophy of postmodernism has infiltrated into the church, where there was 3 phases of humanity. And maybe someone's watching this show today for the first time, and you didn't, or maybe you didn't catch the last program. It's so important because it really does dive into what we're seeing today. For thousands and thousands of years, from Adam until the 17th century, it was the philosophy of pre-modernism, meaning that truth is definitive. Truth is not subjective. Truth is objective. It can be observed, and we can know what truth is. And this was the most important aspect of modernism, is that truth comes from God. all humans for thousands and thousands of years believe that truth came from God. Now, now we believe that truth comes from Yahweh. Truth comes from the God of the Bible. Man, for thousands of years, maybe not. They didn't always think that truth came from Yahweh. Look at the Egyptian gods and so on and so forth. But man, there was a common denominator that man knew that truth came from God. Then we enter into the stage of modernism, which really died off, I would say, in the late 80s or 90s. It died off because we remember, modernism states that there is truth, but truth can be observed through science, not God. God isn't a part of this equation. It's through science.
It's a science. We've got to follow the science. We've got to. It's the scientists.
Exactly. And that's why, we were trained. Many people were trained in seminary through apologetics to argue God through a scientific viewpoint, right? And that was to win people over. Listen, I know that you're a believer in science, you see the stars, but let me tell you how the stars came out. And they would, they would argue God through a scientific standpoint. They would argue God in defending it through things like Darwinism. Well, how do you argue for God in a postmodern world? Because postmodernism, it started in the 60s and 70s, and it really took a hold really in the late 90s or early 2000s, and now we're totally living in a postmodern world, which is a new thing. And it says that there may be truth, but no one can know it. Truth is absolutely subjective. Yes, it's all about your truth
and your truth. Yeah.
Yes, and so I can say that 2 + 2 = 37 because it doesn't matter, because truth is subjective. In a postmodern world, there is no truth, and if there is truth, it's not from God. No, it's not from science. It is what you want it to be. And so that's what's happened. It's the woke liberal church.
I recognize myself. I recognize as a black female. You can't.
Exactly.
You can't. Don't you dare deny my rights, because how dare you? How dare you say that I'm not a black female? That's how dumb the whole thing has become. But when it's not dumb,
that's
Zach,
exactly right.
Is when my granddaughter is in the toilet and a guy who wants to be a girl, can go and sit in the commode next to her. Or in your school, a boy that identifies as a girl can walk into your girl's showers and have a shower next to her. And while she's drying off, he can be and nobody has enough common sense. You remember the story of the emperor with no clothes? How he wanted to make the finest garment of all time, and this tailor came along and said, I will make you a garment that is so pure and so perfect that only the pure of heart can see it. And he took all this and he went away, and it cost him. Finally, he brought the robe and he opened the box, and the emperor looked into the box and it was empty. And the tailor picked it up and said, have you ever seen anything like this before? Try it on. It's so fine, you won't even know you're wearing it. It's so pure. And only those of the pure of heart can see it. And the emperor put on the robe, and the man says, oh my God, it's better than I thought. And they had a parade to show the world the emperor's new clothes. And the people were cheering because only the pure of heart could see this magnificent robe that the emperor's wearing. Oh my goodness, it's perfect. And they're going along, and a wee boy steps out from the crowd and says, you're naked.
That's right.
They're naked, and we're all shutting our mouths and sitting down to be nice. Be a nice Christian. Shut up. Be a nice Christian. That's that love of God. Let me tell you something. If you'd walked with Jesus, you'd be appalled how right and righteous and straight he was. He wasn't the fuzzy-wuzzy, golden-haired, genteel man that we have all believed him to be. He took a whip and emptied the temple out. That would make the news. And that was what Jesus did. And he told all the Pharisees, and said, you're all a bunch of whitewashed sepulchres, you're graves, you're all dead. Listen, guys, we need to stand up for what we believe, or we're going to lose the greatest country that man has ever seen. And then what will you tell your grandkids?
That's exactly right. And you can't preach. You cannot preach Christ and Christ crucified in a postmodern church. You can't. Because it's too offensive. It's too bloody. It's too gory.
The blood.
You can't say You can't say that Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven and that there's not multiple ways to heaven, because it's too offensive.
Yeah.
It's not inclusive, it's exclusive. And we have
Yeah.
to be totally inclusive. You can't talk about homosexuality. You
No.
can't talk about abortion and life in the womb, because all of these things are offensive. You see, this is the problem with the church, and the church has bought into this postmodern political correct philosophy, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. And talking, and I started by saying that the Google are deconstructionists, because one of the main tenets of postmodernism, how you can achieve postmodernism, is by deconstruction, by
Yeah.
deconstructing what everyone has always held to as truth, as absolute truth. There is one male, there is a female, just things are right, things are wrong. And we have went so deep into this that now we can no longer say that 2 plus 2 is 4. Like it's become a place of looking at the Pharaoh
Yeah.
and saying,
Yeah.
you're an idiot. You're
Yeah.
naked and you have no idea what's going on. And that is how deconstructionism works. And that is what we're seeing.
It's unbelievable. Tell me, you sent me an article that says an election where almost everyone loses. Explain that to us. We've got 4 minutes left. I can't believe this hour's gone so fast.
So it is. It's an article talking about how everyone loses it. Well, except for one person. It loses in everything that we're seeing. It's the U.S. political system. It's lost. The legitimacy of our system is on the line in this election, and we've known that. We knew that. The rest of the world has been watching us carefully, and sadly, the election has unfolded and is a complete disgrace, is what the article said. And close to half of the country is going to believe that this election was stolen once this is over. The polling industry, that is another loser in this.
Done.
This is the second presidential election in a row where the polling industry has failed dramatically.
Because
the
it's
mainstream
not
media at
Drew,
this point,
it's not a polling industry anymore. It's a political industry that disinforms the public, tells us that the Trump's 15 points behind, 10 points behind, 7. It's no point. There's no reason. So I gave to the Trump campaign. So I'll disclose that right now. But oh my goodness, they told me you're wasting your money. Why? Because Joe's got it, and that cost hundreds of millions of dollars of folk like me saying, "I'll show you. I'm going to support anyway." And so the polling industry. A long time ago I realized, and you better understand, watching us today, that the polling industry is not informative anymore. It is politically connected to the left wing to discourage you from exercising your right to vote.
That's right. And the Democrats, even if they, and I'm remaining hopeful that we can pull this off. But the Democrats, even if Joe Biden is elected, they still lose. This was supposed to be the election when Democrats finally took back the Senate and strengthened their hold on the House of Representatives. Instead, it appears that Republicans are going to hold the Senate, and Democrats could end up losing several seats in the House. And so, and I will say that is one of the major silver linings of this, Philip, is that as of right now, there's still a couple races, to still be counted and determined. But the biggest news is it does look like that we're going to win the Senate, or we're going to have a Republican majority.
Retain it,
And why that's a silver lining is because, and I know we're running out of time. It's 10:54. Wow.
I've just stolen 3 or 4 minutes, so go ahead. I've taken off the bump in the back.
The reason that's so important that it, as like I said, that it looks like we're going to win the Senate majority is because of court packing, the Equality Act, the Do No Harm Act, Section 230, and the Green New Deal. We know that the Senate will be able to block court packing. The president nominates justices, but the Senate confirms them. Yeah. So with the Republican Senate, we're not going to have to worry about the court being packed unless there's, the rhinos come out of the cage.
Yeah. Well, the equality. The West Virginia Senator Munchin said today he is not going to
Yes.
vote for a packing of the court. He's not going to vote for the filibuster proof. So that
Filibuster either. That's right.
yeah. So what all the promises, all the promises that they made, the loony left made, are going to be stopped by a guy called Mitch McConnell in the Senate. Pray for Mitch McConnell's health and well-being, because and what's going to happen is, in the systems, every 2 years there's an election for the House, and what's going to happen is the president in power always loses seats in the House. That's what caused Donald Trump the problems he faced with impeachment, because they had enough votes in the House to push through these nonsensical things. And so in 2 years, 24 months from now, a whole bunch of new seats are up, and I believe the Democrats will lose the House at that point, because she thought she was going to put such a super margin in there. She was going to be the queen of America. And guess what, folks? That didn't happen. The Senate being retained tells me that the results, as Zach said, the common sense is that you can't split the vote. And the crazy thing is, listen, if we talk about voter registration, it's too complicated. What you're doing is you're going against this is trying to suppress the vote. At the same time, they pushed write-in ballots, which were 10 times more complicated than ever just getting your driving license and going down and proving who you are. Something smells in Denmark, as we used to say in Scotland. Go ahead.
That's right.
We're still at 2 minutes to go, so I've stretched the program for 2 minutes to hear what you're going to say. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, and so Biden did an interview with the LGBT LMNOP community, and he vowed to pass the Equality Act in his first 100 days. The woke Dems have been trying to get this passed for a while. Since they failed to take the Senate, that cannot happen. The Do No Harm Act that was written by Kamala Harris, if the Do No Harm Act was passed, employers would have to pay for their employees' abortions. Religious institutions could be sued if they fired employees based on sexual orientation. These employers would have zero religious protections in this case. Cannot be passed. Section 230, which is very, very important. Donald Trump needs to repeal or rewrite Section 230. But whoever is the sitting president is going to rewrite Section 230, and Section 230 grants legal immunity for platforms to censor Christians and conservatives. It grants them legal immunity. It is legal for them to censor and to take you off their platform, and it's totally wrong. And Section 230 needs to be rewritten. And Biden wants to rewrite it, and Donald Trump wants to rewrite it. If Biden's the president, he's going to rewrite it, but it's not going to go through because of the Senate. And then the Green New Deal.
Listen, you got to come back, Zach.
Because of the Senate.
I want you to check Zach's show out. It's called the Zach Drew Show. It's on Friday nights at 7. Is that right?
That's right. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
7 p.m. Central Standard Time. ZachDrewShow.com. Please send this young man an offering. Bless him and support his ministry, because he is a voice we need to hear and continue to do so more as the days go forward. We love you. Thank you for being part of Daily Faith. Bye-bye.
Love you too.